you're not going to be closing deals based on data and statistics. You're going to be closing business and becoming more profitable when you touch on the right brain part of the emotions and the empathy and the communication versus the left brain part of analytical and process and systems. When we merge those two parts of the brain together, then we can overcome the limiting beliefs. Then we feel more uplifted and positive so that we go into meetings feeling confident, feeling clear, and feeling like we can truly serve and help more people.
She didn't speak until she was 4 years old, and now she teaches thousands how to use their voice with power. Today's guest, Susan Young, CEO of Get in Front Communications, went from radio newsrooms in New York to helping AEC professionals become confident communicators and storytellers. In this episode, you'll discover how to silence imposter syndrome and build real confidence, why storytelling, not slides, wins clients and trust, and the brain science behind clear human communication. If you've ever felt anxious about presenting your ideas, sharing your stories, this conversation will help you speak so people will truly listen. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Buildings 2.0. Today I have a really special guest, Susan Young, CEO of Get in Front Communications. Susan, thanks for joining.
Hey, Jose.
Take us back. Before we dive in, you are leading an incredible program, up-tier communicator program, focused on AEC professionals. Super excited to dive in, but actually we have a little bit of time. Take us all the way back. Before you were leading communications, you have a background in radio and broadcasting.
Yeah.
How'd you end up there?
To me, everything is storytelling. So I'll share my story with you and our listeners here, Jose. I didn't talk till I was 4 years old, and I was born in Brooklyn. My parents were like, she doesn't talk. Like, is she deaf? They didn't know. And they took me to the doctor and they said, no, she's fine. She just doesn't need to talk. They're like, well, what do you mean? And they said, what do you do when she's hungry? And bang on the refrigerator door and then food would magically appear. So eventually, of course, I started to talk. And what does a kid like this do? I go to college in Connecticut and major in mass communication. First week on campus, I stumble on the radio station, and I'd always been interested in current events and writing and in news. So I started doing news and was a DJ on the radio. Went back home to New Jersey after graduating and broke into radio as a radio news anchor and a reporter in the most competitive media market in the country, in New Jersey, New York, and Philly, and interviewed everyone from homeless people to presidents and was on the radio every day. So it was very interesting and very exciting, very chaotic, as is the AEC industry. And then I went on to run Governor Christie Whitman's Office of Radio and Television in Trenton at the state capitol and was a PR director for a statewide nonprofit. Now, all of this comes together because I attended as a reporter and from working in government I attended a lot of hundreds of planning board and zoning meetings and protests and town council meetings where there were engineers and architects presenting to officials about different projects. And there were slide decks and there were presentations of people being very awkward, frankly, looking at their feet over packed slide decks, not making eye contact, not knowing how to use their voice. And I thought to myself, these folks need help. Most of the presentations were painful to watch. A few were powerful, not many. And so I decided to open up my communications training company 25 years ago and to cater to the AEC community. So fast forward to today, that's what we do, especially with folks who are in these chaotic, fast-moving, noisy times with social media and distractions, that I give AEC professionals, especially emerging leaders, who want to feel more confident and clear because they have to go to presentations now and be in conference rooms as seller doers, and they're just not comfortable. They use the excuse of, I'm introverted, I'm shy, I'm reserved, it's not my personality. I used to say that too. If somebody would have told me 25 years ago that I'd be doing this, I would have laughed in their face. I used to say I'd rather sit home in a closet by myself. And so people say, well, you talk to hundreds of thousands of people on the radio every day. Here's the key, though. I didn't have anybody looking back at me. When I'm delivering keynotes, on a stage with 300 people in there, people are looking back at me. It wasn't just my voice. Now it's the body language, it's the gestures. So that's what I teach. It's beyond emotional intelligence. It's beyond personality assessments. It's the brain science that I've learned and been trained in, and the storytelling, the curiosity, the deep listening that brings it all together and makes it special, but also brings huge results for AEC and real estate clients. So, Jose, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I resonate with this quite a bit. I have noticed in my both professional life as well as in academic space, to take it back to college, I remember I'd spend long nights in a studio only obsessing over my design project, thinking about the parts, pieces, walls, windows, doors, etc. Come presentation time, I came to underappreciate the importance of now explaining this to others. And I'm sure, I resonate quite a bit with what you said, whereas like we've overly obsessed over the thing itself and forgot that we now have to communicate this to others. Of course, fast forward to today and the, kind of the professional space, it's no different. But I'm curious for what you have seen in those planning boards, architects and engineers, where should we begin? Like how, what what's the first skill we should maybe consider here when presenting, when communicating to others?
Well, the most important thing is our internal communication because I call it inside out storytelling. And it's the story and the narrative that we tell ourselves. Like I say, I'm introverted, I'm shy, I'm, not good at this, I don't have the confidence, I'm better in the field or on the job site. And so it's the self-talk and the imposter syndrome that we have to get over first. I call it the believability factor. It's two laws of marketing. One is that people have to know you exist, and two, people have to believe you. But the third question really is, do you believe you? So once we can understand how to get past, and this is according to research, the brain science of our internal communication and how to be more positive and overcome those limiting beliefs, then we can go out into the marketplace and be able to articulate our messages and share the stories and share the technical data in a way that's not overstuffed with tech data, but brings personality into the presentation so people get to know you. You're not going to be closing deals based on data and statistics. You're going to be closing business and becoming more profitable when you touch on the right brain part of the emotions and the empathy and the communication versus the left brain part of analytical and process and systems. When we merge those two parts of the brain together, then we can overcome the limiting beliefs. Then we feel more uplifted and positive so that we go into meetings feeling confident, feeling clear, and feeling like we can truly serve and help more people.
So, what portion of us, say architects, engineers, what portion of it is just kind of the neuro part of just making sure that we, to your point, we believe ourselves? And then what portion of it is just the mechanics by which we tell a story? And like, how do I think about that? I think naturally as engineer types, we think about the mechanics, like if you do this and then this and then this, maybe the more formulaic. But what you're suggesting is that perhaps it's not just the mechanics, but actually you just got to start with yourself.
Right. And there are systems, and that's what I've studied since, for the last 30 years or so of my life. It's a journey of self-discovery. And there
Mm,
are systems and processes and steps to take, but it's again more right brain oriented so that you're able to go into your past experiences and understand the neural pathways and how we form the habits and the routines and our behaviors from the time we're children, from 0 to 8 years old. Those are the experiences and the memories that we carry around with us that
mm,
don't serve us well as adults. And so we give away our power of our brains to that 6 year old who overheard their parents saying, he's no good in math, or Joey's been a better piano player, or maybe got bullied on the playground. So we carry that over to our adult lives and we get into these, I'm going to say, ruts of believing this, and we need to get rid of that baggage. And that's what I teach is the brain science and the neural pathways, how to carve out and really plant new seeds of success instead of weeds of doubt so that you
mm.
can get out of your own way and get unstuck. There are formulas and ways to do this with communication and not just with drones and BIM and renderings.
Give me an example as to maybe either maybe a particular client, a particular maybe individual firm that you've seen get out of their own way, if you will. I'm curious myself what that looks like. What does success look like?
That's a great question. And what I hear from, the feedback from our top tier communicator program, from the online training and the in-person training is that they overcome these limiting beliefs because they suddenly realize that their self-awareness is heightened and they notice how they're moving and how they're behaving, and they know how to switch up and move their attention in a snap. And we can all do it when we realize how we're moving and how we're behaving. so that you can overcome those obstacles and be more successful and step into your potential. So it's, in many cases, I'll give you one example, is somebody who goes into a networking event and doesn't stand in the corner, but sits with people that they don't know so that they can mingle. It's their body language, it's how they show up. Everything in AEC and in real estate acquisitions and in buildings, it's all energy. And that's what Einstein said. It's all physics. And so our energy is transferable. And so when you feel like you don't belong, or you feel like you're not worthy, or you feel like you're not perfect, this is what I teach. And when people go, graduates go into different meetings, whether it's shortlisted interviews or at a conference, you start to mingle with other people. They get out of their own way because they got out of their own head. And so they notice their body language. They start to feel more self-assured and confident when they introduce themselves. They're more proactive in their communication. One client, they said, let's put this to work, what Susan's taught us about the brain science combined with the people skills and the communication and how to structure your story and how to articulate your message in a clear, concise way. So they had 3 shortlisted meetings in 1 week. They won all 3 meetings because they used the techniques that are repeatable and timeless. I have clients that 10 years later, they're still using the same things because storytelling is not a fad. Curiosity is not going out of style anytime soon. So that's how we apply the part that I teach, again, that higher level self-awareness, so that you can be more productive and stand out and differentiate yourself from the others who are blending in because of the excuses that they have.
Right. Right. Well, so what would you say to someone who says, well, in terms of self-awareness, I'm self-aware that I'm really anxious. So in that sense, I'm aware of me not doing a great job, but like how do you combine the kind of emotion of the human combined with the, I guess, technique required to communicate? And perhaps maybe just to set the context, let's say I really like how you kind of framed it, right? Maybe at a planning board, a professional engineer, architect, somewhat goes up, kind of presents their case for a particular project. What do we typically get wrong? Like where's the disconnect between me as the designer and then those listening? What's that gap that perhaps you find a lot of designers kind of miss?
Yeah, they miss what I call the human factor, that we
Mm,
need to communicate H to H, human to human,
mm,
because you weren't born an engineer or a real estate executive or a designer or an architect. We were all born tiny little babies. I wasn't born a news reporter. And so we start to learn and be credible and get the credentials that we need. But in the end, people don't want to hear statistics. They want to connect as human beings with deeper relationships, with storytelling, and get to know somebody. KPMG did a research study that showed 8 in 10 executives and stakeholders make their decisions on who to hire based on intuition and their gut, not on the statistics. And that's where the gap that we're talking about is that the people at the planning board meetings and that do the presentations, they think that the statistics and the technical part should be the focus, when it's really, yes, we do need the technical part. Yes, the decision makers and stakeholders want to know how the doers are going to do this and how the marketing and they don't want to be schmoozed as much as they want to get to know you as a human being. So when you can blend and mesh the technical part with the personality part, that's where the magic happens.
what I'm also hearing is that you got to somehow find a way to make yourself be likable.
hmm Well, this is the third factor that I focus on. We got the believability factor, we've
Yeah.
got the human factor, and then we have the likability factor.
Mm.
And so people do business with people who are like them. And so when you learn again that deeper science of how do you use body language and verbal and nonverbal communication to be like the people that you're talking with and meeting with. And that way you're like them and they're like you. And we do business with people that we like. We don't do business with QR codes or business cards. We do business
Right.
with people and human beings. So when you're able to make that connection and have that rapport and be engaging and have that level of trust, That's where business happens.
This part is particularly interesting to me. Like, what I'm thinking about what you said about people do business with people they like and that they're similar to. For in the business environment, I'm thinking about women. I'm thinking about minorities. Like when you literally just don't have connection to the people that you might be pitching to. Let's say you're a woman pitching to a man, and maybe just like how do you create that connection that's deeper than just simply what we look like? Like what are the things you kind of gravitate to? Is that to your point are human, all too human kind of thing?
Three words: think you can. Think you can. You know that you belong there. And that's, again, it goes back to our internal narrative. I'm a
Right,
woman. I'm a person from a different culture. I don't belong there. I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect. It's okay to be perfectly imperfect. We're
right,
going to mess up. We're going to screw up. But it's how you handle it and how you move forward through that situation. And before you get there, you do that mental preparation of, I belong here. I'm qualified. I've got the education. I've got the skills. I've got the credentials. And I'm not at the kids' table anymore. I
right,
belong at this table and I have a voice. I have ideas. I have insights. And how dare you keep that to yourself? How dare you keep those gifts to yourself when you could be sharing them and being involved at a higher level, not just as a vendor, but as a trusted advisor and a resource, not just bringing value, but bringing immense value.
right.
That's when the game changes.
Right. It reminds me of I think an interview Obama gave when asked, and he said something like, after you've been around the tables and you've gotten to sit down with really important folks, and or at least that you'd think are really important folks, you realize at the table, everyone's just trying to figure it out. They might have more exposure than you, but everyone's just trying to figure this thing out. I think in my case, I think I was had the advantage like in my college years, Obama was in presidency, and just for me kind of represented like the aspirational figure as like how you communicate thoughtfully, use communication as a way to bring folks together, that sort of thing. I'm curious, in your life and your experience, are there standouts to you as like this is kind of the example, it's like what we should aspire to, folks that perhaps do it exceptionally well?
Yeah, I've had so many clients that, private coaching clients and group coaching clients that, still keep in touch after 8 or 10 years. And, one that I can think of that we worked with 3 years ago in a group coaching program that sends me, I see her on LinkedIn. And so she's very active now, was always hiding, blending in. And now she's posting all the time. And, she sent me an email. She said, I never would have been able to do this and get a promotion if I hadn't taken the class because I didn't know this. And people aren't taught this in college. You're taught the technical part, you're taught the
Right.
science part, but it's the part, the human factor, as I said, of making those connections. And that's where people really tend to shine and get those repeatable results. Because, as I say, communication is timeless. If you remember 15 or 20 years ago, I'll give the example of Facebook. When it became really popular, when it first came out on the market, was people said, oh, this is going to be a fad. Well, look where we are, right? It's not a fad, and neither is communication. Communication's been around from thousands of years ago when the cavemen were carving hieroglyphics on the walls. And
Right.
then, that was the version of storytelling. And then we moved to World War II when President Roosevelt was on the radio giving the fireside chats in 1933. People would gather around the radio because there was very few, if any, television. And so you'd listen to the radio to hear the updates. And now with social media, people have the platform. But if you're not using it in the way that's going to be beneficial to shine and to be part of that conversation, then shame on you.
You talked about the cavemen to the radio to fast forward. It wouldn't be a tech podcast if I didn't bring it up, but AI. I find that, of course, there's pros, there's cons, and I'm sure we have to be mindful of both. But is there anything that stands out to you as that the role of emerging technologies, specifically AI, in its role of either helping or hurting us in the way that we communicate?
I think it's really how we use it, knowing that you put something into, to ask a question or look for information and not just copy and paste it into, okay, here's my newsletter for the week or here's my post, but you want to have your voice, your style. It comes through. And so, as a writer for 40 years, it's how does it sound? Does it sound like you? Is it your tone? Is it your choice of words? If somebody said, used a word that I would never use, that I find in ChatGPT or whatever AI I might be using, I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to change it because I might like some of the points that they made, or it might get me thinking about how I want to express this. But in the end, I want to use my voice because people want to get to know me. They don't do business with AI, right?
Right.
They're going to, again, connect human to human. And that's the tone that we want to set. It's got its advantages for sure, but there's also room for us to step in and say, this is my voice because my name is on this post. My name is on my LinkedIn profile, not yours.
Which speaks to the importance of like authenticity. It's something that I know you've spoken about. What does it mean to be authentic? Genuine question. Like when that's something that we're all trying to figure out, amongst ourselves. Does it when people say you have to be authentic? Is it ultimately referring to like try to write like you sound, or like how can I think about this, as we obviously strive to, especially in the age of ChatGPT, when we could easily just prompt something and just copy and paste. To your point, I think we can all agree we definitely don't want just kind of robotic sounding generic styles from everyone. But how do we think about that?
It's about being yourself and trusting yourself. And as I said at the beginning, the part about you have to be perfect or that you have that negative self-talk, the key here is, the truth is that we have to trust ourselves at that deep level that we're not perfect and that it is okay to be genuine and to be yourself and to show up in a real way. Because when you're being real and when you're being authentic and genuine, you can't make a mistake. When you try to be somebody you're not, that's when you foul things up. And that puts more pressure on you saying, oh boy, I screwed this up. But when you are yourself, and people will say to me, you're the real deal. There's nothing tricky. I had the same thing when I worked with Governor Christy Whitman. I knew her from radio from before I worked in the governor's office of radio and TV. I knew her because she was in the same area and region where the radio station was at work. So I had her home number. She called me. I called her. I saw her at meetings. And so when I went to work in the governor's office, people would say to me, you've known her a long time. What was she like before she was governor? And I said, she's exactly the same way. There's just nothing tricky about her. She's herself.
Right.
And reporters would ask her a question and she knew all the issues. She could fire away and people would go from, taxes to abortion to the bridge being built to all of these different issues, federal and local and regional. And then there was a time where somebody asked her a question. I'll never forget this. And she said, I don't know. And everybody was floored. She was the first woman governor, 50th governor of New Jersey. And she said, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And then she looked at her aide at Jason and said, make a note of this, please. And we're going to get back to you within the next 24 hours. And the key here is she did. She followed through because of integrity.
Right.
And that's how we become our authentic selves. It's okay to say, I don't know, because nobody knows everything. Right. Nobody's perfect. We're going to mess up. But being willing to go there and to admit that and to say, I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll follow up and keep your word. That's where the authenticity lies.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think I wanted to ask you about the relationships now in business settings. When we first spoke, you talked about the kind of disconnect often that happens between presenting something and like a disconnect between executives. Whereas, executives might be thinking about like, how do we grow revenue, reduce costs? But then, perhaps when you are presenting a project, let's maybe set the setting as an architectural firm, you're presenting a project to an executive. In your experience, what have you found is kind of the disconnect there between kind of the C-suite and management or the team staff?
The disconnect that I see is that marketers and business development professionals and people that work on job sites, project managers and superintendents and real estate executives, they're confused about the expectations. Maybe the expectations haven't been expressed to them clearly. And when you know how to connect what you do every day, that 3,000 foot view, how it fits into the big picture of the 30,000 foot view of the company, most people, and we did a program with 30 people from commercial real estate, and they sent me the pre-homework form, confidential. 95% of them said, I have no idea. I've never had a conversation with my boss about expectations. They don't know why they come to work every day. That's messed up, okay? When we talk about expectations, we tie in the marketers and the savvy business development folks. they're able to tie in what they do to the profitability of the firm. That's what the C suite wants. When you're able to build that bridge and not just talk about the technical part, but talk about the profit margin and the 3% this if we do it this way. And I've noticed this, that if we're breaking into this new healthcare market, we can get these supplies and have the infrastructure built in this way instead of taking 2 extra months, which is going to save time and cost overruns. When you're able to connect the financial part to the communication part, again, that's where you're not sitting at the kids' table anymore. That's where you're valued with your insights internally, and you emerging leaders wind up getting promotions and growing their career paths. You have that different level of visibility and trust because the C-suite knows that you are presenting things that they're not seeing. So you find what's missing. And that's the conversation, the higher level conversation you want to have.
Right. This is an incredible primer for the program you're running, Top Tier Communicator. For those listening in, who is the program for and perhaps what they can maybe expect going through it?
Yeah, we used to have the 3-day live classes, but based on everybody's chaotic schedules, we condensed all this and collapsed what I have 40 years of experience into on-demand learning. So there's 3 options. One is TTC, Top Tier Communicator Lite, which is just a couple of videos, learn on at your convenience, and extra bonus videos and all of these extra surprises and CE units and all of that, workbooks. You can download that on demand. And then the next program, and that's for people who are, 2, 3 years experience just getting into the marketplace. Then we have TTC on demand, which is 5 modules. And again, you watch it at your own pace. You have 30-day access. You get bonus videos and ongoing credits, vocational credits. And then we have TTC Live, which is 2 days, but it's only 2 hours a day. So it's once a month. And we do a Thursday and a Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. And it's live group. So you have access to me. We address more of the emerging leaders of 10 to 15 years experience, people who are really stepping into their career path and the succession planning that firms are worried about, sharing that wisdom. How are you going to move forward when so many people in this multi-generational workplace are retiring? So we're preparing these emerging leaders and the project managers and superintendents through the live group coaching in TTC to be able to feel more confident, be more clear, to win those pursuits and to show up in a bigger, bolder way with confidence so that they feel it and the clients feel it as well. But you're not selling anything. We teach business development as you're educating people. And that's where nobody likes to be sold to, but everybody likes to buy. And so we teach you how to do the presentations, how to network, how to read body language and nonverbal and verbal communication at a higher level. So we have Top Tier Communicator at 3 different points.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
Susan, this has been great fun. I think you've taken us through a journey from 4-year-old girl banging on the refrigerator to get some food and just kind of exploring and trying to navigate communication to lunging yourself into the world of broadcasting, radio, and now teaching others how to be authentic. So really, I think it's incredible. I think where your personal journey has come and inspiring, I think, for others to follow along. For those that want to find you, how do they do that? Or reach out to you online? Like how do they find you?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn as most in this industry are. The website is aecamplify.com. And then you can do the / top tier communicator. But if you go to aecamplify.com, and we'll provide the QR code, I know, in the show notes. Keep in touch, connect on LinkedIn, look at the programs. There's something for everybody, whether it's individuals or for firms in Top Tier Communicator. And that's the way is to keep learning. It's not like you're graduating college and you get the degree and you hang it on the wall. It's not a one and done deal. This is ongoing continuum of learning that we have to keep up with. That, the industry has been 25 years behind, and now we're 25 years into this new century and they're still behind. So we want to catch up and be able to step into a new level of success with communication, confidence, and leadership.
To that 4-year-old girl, what last question, I promise. What now, with the benefit of 40 years behind you, and you've seen, as you said, conversations with folks in the street and presidents, what piece of advice would you give that little girl?
I would say, think you can. Everything I swore I'd never do, I've done. And just be open and willing to look at other insights and not just focus on what you messed up, but turn the volume down on that and turn up the positive. This journey of professional development is also a personal journey. And you find out about yourself in a way that I never could have imagined. And again, we talk about being authentic and real. It just cracked me open in ways that really contribute to my professional success as well. So
Right.
think of it as an ongoing journey. Make the time to keep learning. Learn from people who are 5 to 10 steps ahead of you, and you'll see the possibilities will fall into your lap.
Amazing. Susan, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jose.